In a continuation of the article from the Detroit Free Press, the records from Dillon's daily appointment schedule show active state involvement immediately before and after the decision to make the Flint water switch, up to and including the offices of the treasurer, who oversees emergency managers, and the governor. The records do not show that Snyder or Dillon decided Flint residents should drink Flint River water until the new KWA pipeline to Lake Huron was completed. Again, they don't show that they were switching over to the Flint River water. There's a lot of murkiness, quote unquote, as to exactly how that decision came down. The decision to draw water from the Flint River started in April 2014, combined with a failure by the Department of Environmental Quality to require treatment to soften the water to reduce corrosion and leaching of lead from delivery pipes, and other failures related to water testing, which is really what blew up. After a public outcry, Snyder and the legislature decided to act, but at that point it was too late. But going back to March 13th, when the decision and vote was made to switch off of the Detroit water system and onto the Huron water system, the current mayor at that time, Mayor Walling, was quoted as saying Flint would continue to get its water from the Detroit Water System Department until the $272 million KWA pipeline system to Flint was completed. On Friday, he repeated his assertion that the plan was to stick with Detroit as an interim source, and he said he was not aware of any pressure from Dillon or any other state official to instead use the Flint water as an interim source because it would be cheaper. That decision came a lot later, and for reasons that were not entirely clear. As I stated, Flint and Detroit were tied together and under the control of a state-appointed emergency managers since late 2011 and March 2013 respectively, but could not agree on a rate structure for the DWSD to continue serving Flint until the KWA pipeline was completed. The failure to reach a pricing agreement on an interim water supply for Flint is puzzling, considering Dillon's Treasury Department had commissioned an engineering study which in February 2013 said it would be less costly for Flint to stay with the Detroit water system than to switch to the KWA system. Also, state officials were consumed at the time with trying to keep Detroit out of bankruptcy, and for Flint to split with the DWSD would only make Detroit's financial situation that much more perilous. So again, there's a lot going on here, and it's basically starting at the top. Now, I'm going to play a section from the News One program, and that's going to give you another side to this story.
You will now turn to what's taking place in Flint, Michigan, where a top Environmental Protection Agency administrator has resigned as a result of this crisis. Susan Hedman, who was in charge of the EPA region, that area Michigan covers, is resigning February 1st. In the emails released by Michigan Governor Rick Snyder, the EPA asked Michigan regulators if they were treating pipe corrosion. State officials said yes, but when pressed about certain treatments, they said no. The Flint water study estimates it will cost more than $1 billion to replace the damaged pipes. Joining me right now on Skype in Blacksburg, Virginia, is Dr. Amy Pruton, a professor at Virginia Tech, also principal investigator for the Flint water study. Amy, what is amazing here is that officials in Michigan wouldn't listen to experts like you. Y'all kept ringing the alarm, and they pretty much were saying, okay, not a big deal.
It's shocking. The water was brown. It was obvious that there was a problem, and citizens had been speaking up, and it fell on deaf ears. And, Leanne Walters contacted Mark Edwards, that I've worked with for a long time on water issues, and he contacted me, and we got our team together and sent some students up there and got some samples, and the levels of lead were crazy. And even then, so that was August.
So you and your team went to Flint in August of 2015.
That's right. We sent a team of students, and Mark Edwards went up there.
And how long was it with your testing were y'all able to determine how bad the water was?
Well, first I can say that Miguel del Toro had already tested the water, and back in April had reported problems with lead. And so he did that, and then he was silenced. He was told by EPA Region 5 Administrator Susan Hedman that you just mentioned to step down. He was silenced. He was not permitted to talk about it anymore.
And Miguel was an EPA expert on this issue.
Oh, that's right. He is the leading expert at the EPA, and he was doing his job. And he saw these crazy high lead levels and got in touch with the Department of Environmental Quality and got nowhere, and eventually was told by his boss to stop talking.
When you and your team were sending emails, were contacting the state, what did it feel like when they would respond and you would see this response and it was as if everything was fine and normal?
Yeah, worse than that, worse than, the city manager on camera drank the water and said, "Look, I'm drinking the water, it's fine." The spokesperson for the Michigan Department of Environmental Quality said, "Relax." But worse than that, Mark Edwards was actually attacked and belittled in the media. Like, well, he studies lead and water. What do you expect? Of course, he's going to find a problem. And there was some really weird comment of, oh, well, he's just pulling a rabbit out of a hat. Don't listen to him.
Now, that's what I don't understand. You have the leading expert at the EPA saying there's a problem with the water. You have an independent scientist from the University of Virginia Tech stating there's a problem. And then you get two of the EQ employees saying there isn't a problem. But shouldn't their boss have been reviewing what they were saying versus what the scientists were saying and done something further to either corroborate one set of studies versus the other? No, that basically was a buck stopping effort in order to put pressure on the city of Detroit to reduce the amount of money that they were taking in, which would have helped to alleviate their problems.
And it was crazy.
Now, of course, you see now the governor releasing these emails. We're now seeing even more basically betrayal of the constituents by officials in his office, including the chief of staff and so many others. And as we look at this, what's going to happen, this is not a situation where you can switch water. This is a situation where literally you're going to have to replace the entire pipe system in the city, not only of the city, but also to every house, to every business.
Right. So, ideally, we shouldn't have lead pipe out there, but that is a reality. And cities across the country, Flint's getting a lot of attention, but, folks need to be aware there is lead pipe out there. And the number one thing you can do to protect yourself is to control the chemistry. We have the science in place. If Flint would have used corrosion control like they were legally required to do, then we wouldn't be talking right now.
Yeah. Amy, we certainly appreciate it. Thank you so very much for joining us and for staying on top of this. And I wish folks had listened to you and your team. We wouldn't be in this problem right now, and likely 10 people will not be dead and thousands impacted.
Thank you.
Now, let's just go back over some of the other items here. March 2013 was 1 month after Dillon received a report he commissioned intending to provide an analysis of the water supply options to assist the treasurer in determining any potential risks and the best course going forward for supplying potable water to the city of Flint. The study found it would be less costly for Flint to stay on the Detroit Water and Sewage Department system than to cover its 30% share of the new KWA pipeline from Lake Huron. Treasury held 2 and possibly 3 lengthy meetings to go over the Tucker Young report with the Flint leaders, KWA consultants, and DEQ representatives. During those meetings, they learned several assumptions made by Treasury were incorrect and undermined the conclusions reached in their report. The treasurer said he never received any pressure from the governor's office to decide one way or the other on approving the KWA system. They made a decision based on what they thought was in the best interest of Flint, which was to pay more money to go on another system, okay, that they had to cover 30% of the cost on, and obviously they were not concerned with the financial durability of Flint. Otherwise, they would have stayed on the Detroit system. Waller, who was the mayor of Flint at that time, said the decision to use the Flint River as an interim source was ultimately made by the Flint emergency manager, who was Edward Kurtz, K-U-R-T-Z, in about June of 2013, when he expanded an existing engineering contract with the Flint water treatment plant to cover the needed upgrade. So they knew the plant was below standards, and they were going to have to invest money just to bring the plant up to date. Governor Snyder's spokeswoman, Sarah Werfel, said the governor was part of a consensus about Flint splitting from the DWSD to get its long-term water from KWA, but Snyder was not involved in efforts to reach an interim pricing agreement with Flint and Detroit, and not involved in the decision to draw drinking water from the Flint River. But if the governor had appointed an emergency manager for Flint and an emergency manager for Detroit, you're telling me that those 2 emergency managers couldn't have got together on a compromised price for Flint to continue to get its water from Detroit? Nah, that's a bunch of bullshit. So as far as I'm concerned, the governor's hands are completely dirty. Kurtz, who signed off on the agreement, I'd love to know if he had any financial benefit from the situation going on, and I definitely want to know what the hell was going on with Darnell Earley, because he came in before the Flint water system was taken offline from Detroit, and he agreed with it, in my opinion. And if there are videos out there on his interview, and he stated that he didn't have any reason to second guess any decisions that had been made before him. So in my mind, if you're not willing to second guess any decisions made before you, you are in fact signing off on those decisions, and you are responsible. And he definitely was, because he was the one that threw the switch that ultimately created this problem.